When I walked in that day, she couldn't hide the shock on her face. My cousin, Danielle, froze mid-sentence, champagne glass in hand, her eyes darting from me to the event manager like she'd just seen a ghost. To her, I was just the cheap relative, the one who drove an older truck instead of a shiny new SUV, the one who never bought the fanciest gifts, the one she loved to mock during family gatherings. And yet here I was, standing in the grand ballroom she had chosen for her wedding, being introduced not as her poor cousin, but as the owner of the building she thought she had splurged on. But before that moment of satisfaction, there's some backstory. Danielle and I grew up together, but we couldn't have been more different. She was the type of kid who needed the newest everything, the latest sneakers, the flashiest backpack, the designer dresses for homecoming. Her parents often stretched their budget to give her what she wanted, and she learned early on to flaunt it. I was quieter, more practical. My dad ran a small construction business, and my mom worked long hours as a nurse. We weren't broke, but my parents believed in saving, fixing things ourselves, and investing instead of showing off. I didn't mind the contrast until Danielle started making it her mission to highlight it. At Christmas, she'd hold up my modest gifts next to hers and make a scene about how adorable it was that I thought socks were a thoughtful present. At birthday parties, she'd joke loudly about me bringing budget-friendly cards while her friends gave brand-name makeup kits. Family laughed it off as just Danielle being Danielle. I laughed too, but inside it stung. By high school, I had learned to let her words roll off me. While she chased popularity and expensive trends, I worked weekends with my dad, learning construction, plumbing, and the ins and outs of how buildings really functioned. What Danielle saw as dull, I saw as a ticket to freedom. By the time I graduated college, yes, community college, another thing she mocked, I already had my first rental property. I kept my head down, reinvested everything, and by my late 20s, I had quietly built a portfolio that people in my family had no clue about. Danielle certainly didn't. To her, I was still the cousin who wore clearance jeans. Things came to a head at Thanksgiving a year before her wedding. Everyone was gathered at my aunt's place, plates piled high, conversations overlapping. Danielle had just announced her engagement, flashing her ring around like a trophy. When her fiancé mentioned they were still venue shopping, Danielle smirked and, without missing a beat, said, "Well, don't expect my cousin here to contribute much. He's too cheap for nice weddings." The table chuckled. Even her fiancé gave a polite laugh. I forced a smile, stabbed at my turkey, and said nothing. But inside, I made a promise to myself. One day, her words would come back to her. Fast forward 6 months. I got a call from the management team of one of my properties, a renovated historic building downtown with a ballroom that had become a hot wedding venue. They wanted to confirm details with the owner regarding a large booking. The name on the contract stopped me cold, Danielle. My cousin had booked my building for her wedding. I almost laughed out loud. It felt like fate was handing me the perfect setup. I didn't show up right away. I let the planning process unfold. The venue staff handled everything, and I stayed behind the scenes. I knew Danielle would never connect the dots. She had no idea where my investments were. To her, I was still living small. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I wanted to see her face when she finally realized. That day came during a site visit. Danielle had brought her bridesmaids, her mom, and the coordinator to finalize decor choices. I decided to stop by and check in with the manager about some unrelated maintenance. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. When I walked into the ballroom, the air shifted. Danielle was in full performance mode, gesturing at the chandeliers and telling her bridesmaids how she'd spared no expense. Her words echoed as I approached the group. The manager turned, saw me, and smiled warmly. "Perfect timing," she said. "This is Mr. Harrison, the owner of the building." The room went silent. Danielle blinked at me, her mouth opening just enough to reveal how utterly unprepared she was for this. One bridesmaid nearly choked on her mimosa. I nodded casually, like this was nothing new. "Hi, Danielle. Nice choice of venue." Her cheeks flushed red so quickly it looked like someone had flipped a switch. She tried to recover, laughing nervously. "Wait, you own this? Since when?" "Since about 5 years ago," I said evenly, keeping my tone polite. "It's one of several properties I manage." The silence stretched. Her mom shifted uncomfortably, the bridesmaids exchanged glances, and Danielle just stared at me, caught between disbelief and embarrassment. In that moment, I remembered every time she had called me cheap, every smirk, every jab. And while I wasn't out for revenge, I won't lie, watching her face cycle through shock, confusion, and bruised pride was deeply satisfying. And that was only the beginning. The rest of that site visit was a masterclass in Danielle trying to claw back her confidence. She straightened her posture, forced a smile, and said, "Well, of course you own it. That's so you. Always investing in boring stuff instead of enjoying life." Her words came out sharp, but her voice cracked just enough to betray her discomfort. One of her bridesmaids coughed into her drink to hide a laugh. I simply smiled. Boring or not, it seems to be working. The manager moved on quickly, discussing table arrangements and lighting packages, but I could feel Danielle's eyes on me every few seconds. She was rattled, and she hated it. This was supposed to be her grand moment, showing off her luxury venue to her friends. Instead, she'd been blindsided by the realization that the building belonged to the cousin she loved to belittle. When the meeting ended, Danielle cornered me near the exit. Her bridesmaids trailed behind, pretending to be absorbed in their phones, but clearly listening. "Look," she said in a hushed tone, "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but don't make this weird. This is my wedding. Don't go around telling people you own the building, okay?" I raised an eyebrow. "Danielle, my name is on the deed. I don't exactly have to keep it a secret." She huffed. "Yeah, but it makes me look, I don't know, like I didn't know. People are going to think I'm clueless." I didn't have to say anything. She already was clueless, but I wasn't about to rub it in. Instead, I nodded politely. "I'll let the staff handle things, like always. You won't even notice me." She seemed satisfied enough with that, but as she turned to leave, she added, "Since you're family, you could maybe, I don't know, waive some of the fees? Give us a family discount." There it was. The Danielle I knew. I shook my head slowly. "You booked through the venue like everyone else. The contracts are already signed, the packages chosen, and the payments scheduled. It wouldn't be fair to bend the rules just because you and I are related." Her face tightened. "So you're seriously going to make me pay full price? At your building? You're unbelievable." "I think what's unbelievable," I replied calmly, "is that you think it's fine to call me cheap for years and then expect a handout." Her bridesmaids were definitely listening now. One of them raised her eyebrows in Danielle's direction, like ouch. Danielle turned scarlet and stormed off without another word. Over the next few weeks, I stayed out of the wedding planning. I wasn't petty enough to meddle, and honestly, I had bigger responsibilities. But every so often, I'd get little updates through the venue staff. Danielle was difficult, they said. She argued over linen colors, accused the caterer of shortchanging her on sample portions, and complained that the sound system wasn't high-end enough. At one point, she even demanded the ballroom be repainted because she didn't like how the lighting made her dress look in photos. Through it all, I remained professional. I signed off on the maintenance requests, approved the invoices, and kept my distance. But word travels fast in families, and soon I started getting questions. At Sunday dinner, my uncle leaned over and whispered, "So, is it true you own Danielle's venue?" I nodded, sipping my water. "Yep, bought it 5 years ago." His eyebrows shot up. "Son, you've been holding out on us." I shrugged. "I just prefer to keep things quiet." When Danielle heard that the family was buzzing about me, she was furious. She called me one evening, her voice dripping with irritation. "You couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you?" I frowned. I never said a word. Uncle Jim asked me directly, so I told him the truth. That's all. "Well, now everyone's making jokes about me not even knowing who owns my own wedding venue. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is?" "Danielle," I said evenly, "you're the one who spent years calling me cheap. Maybe this is just balance." She gasped like I'd slapped her. "This is my wedding, not some revenge story for you to feel smug about." "I don't need revenge," I replied quietly. "I'm just living my life. You're the one making it about status." She hung up on me. A week later, the venue manager forwarded me an email. Danielle had requested that my presence be limited on the wedding day. She didn't want me hovering or acting like the big boss. The staff laughed when they showed me, but I just smiled. If Danielle wanted to believe the world revolved around her wedding, let her. I had no intention of stealing her spotlight. But the spotlight has a funny way of shifting on its own. Because on the morning of her big day, something happened that no amount of planning or pretending could cover up. The call came at 7:12 a.m., the morning of the wedding. I was halfway through my coffee when the venue manager said, "We've got water on the catering prep floor. Ice machine line blew. We're containing it, but I wanted you here." I was in the truck 3 minutes later, toolbox rattling in the passenger seat, caffeine sloshing against the lid. The ballroom lights were still dim when I arrived, sunlight sliding through those tall, arched windows like ribbons. In the back hall, two servers were mopping as fast as they could while a thin, relentless stream whispered from a copper line behind the prep sink. Not a full burst, but steady enough to threaten the finish on a brand new floor. I crouched, shut the inline valve I'd insisted we add last year. One of those boring upgrades nobody notices until it matters, and the leak sighed to silence. We dragged out shop vacs, fans, towels. The building breathed again. While maintenance replaced the hose, I called my plumber, then the caterer, then the DJ to warn him to test his gear on the dedicated circuits we'd added for events. I've learned trouble travels in pairs. At 9:03, Danielle swept in with her entourage, a wake of hairspray and excitement. She was radiant. There's no point pretending otherwise, and for a second I felt a simple cousinly pride I hadn't felt in years. Then she saw me in work boots with a coil of wet towels over my shoulder. Her mouth tightened. "Why are you here?" she whispered, as if I'd arrived to steal her bouquet. "Fixing a minor issue," I said. "All good now. You won't miss a beat." She glanced down the hall to where the manager was thanking a server. "Did you do this on purpose?" "To what? Look like a hero?" I forced a smile. If I wanted to look like a hero, I wouldn't be carrying laundry. Her mom touched her arm. "Danielle, let him work." And to me, softly, "Thank you." I kept my head down. Plumber patched the line. Fans hummed. Crisis 1, contained. At noon, while the florist fluffed centerpieces and a bridesmaid wept happy tears over a crooked eyelash, the DJ plugged his uplights into a single power strip on a wall outlet already feeding the coffee urns. The room blinked, sighed, and half the circuits tripped. I heard it from the corridor, the sudden hush, then little gasps, like the building had inhaled. I jogged to the breaker panel we'd relocated for ADA compliance last spring. The DJ hovered, pale. "I thought it would be fine," he muttered. "It is fine," I said, flipping the right breakers. "If you use the designated outlets. They're on separate circuits." I pointed out the taped labels we'd added with embossed black letters. Uplights, Circuit C, DJ, Circuit D, boring labels. Lifesavers on days like this. Lights rose with a warm glow. The DJ exhaled. "Thanks, man." "Any time," I said, and this time I meant it. Word filtered back to the bridal suite that the owner had handled it. I didn't see Danielle's face, but I heard the nerves in her laugh through the half-opened door. Of course he did. It's his favorite thing, fixing things. The bridesmaids didn't echo it. Guests began to arrive. The foyer filled with perfume and promises, cousins I hadn't seen since high school, uncles comparing ties, a toddler in suspenders announcing, "I'm the ring pizza," to anyone within earshot. The string quartet tested a waltz. The air smelled like hydrangeas and citrus polish. As the processional began, the manager sidled over. "We're smooth," she murmured. "Really smooth." "Good," I said. "Let's keep it that way." And it was. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were simple and earnest, the kind you can only say if you mean them. When they kissed, the room erupted, and for once Danielle's smile didn't look like a performance. It looked like relief. During cocktail hour I stood back by the service hall, happy in the shadows. Ethan, the groom, found me anyway, weaving through guests with a plate of bacon-wrapped dates. "You're the cousin," he said, extending his hand. "And the owner. I just wanted to say thanks. They told me about the water thing." "Glad it was small," I said. "Congratulations." He grinned, a little overwhelmed. She's incredible," he said, and there was no calculation in it, just love. I couldn't help liking him. At dinner, the best man's speech was funny, the maid of honors was teary, and the clinking of glasses sounded like sleigh bells. I thought the night might pass without another wobble. Then the photographer, trying to capture the cake with the chandelier reflection, nudged a ladder into a wall sconce. Glass tinkled. Not a disaster, but enough to make the room flinch. I was there before the worry could bloom. The sconce cover had hairline cracks no one would notice. We swapped it with a spare from storage, a habit from my dad. Always keep twins for anything fragile. And in 3 minutes the glow was perfect again. When the music came back up, The DJ took the mic. Quick shout out to the owner who kept today seamless, he said, gesturing toward the back before I could vanish. Heads turned. Applause swelled, unexpected and kind. Danielle looked over, caught mid-smile, and for a heartbeat I saw the kid who used to chase lightning bugs with me at our grandma's barbecue. She pressed her napkin to her lips and looked away, but the edge in her gaze had softened into something like humility. Later, between songs, she approached me by the balcony doors, where the city burned gold behind the glass. She held her skirt with one hand, the other twisting her bouquet ribbon. I was unfair, she said without preamble. About you. For years. I didn't say anything. The music thumped softly through the door. I called you cheap because it was easy, she continued. Because it made me feel, I don't know, big. But today, everyone kept saying, good thing he's prepared. Good thing he thought ahead. And I realized that's what I made fun of. The part that shows up. She laughed once, wetly. I'm sorry. It landed like a weight set down after a long carry. I nodded. Thank you. I accept that. She glanced toward the dance floor where Ethan was laughing with his dad. He's the best thing that ever happened to me, she whispered. I don't want to be the kind of person who needs to feel above anyone to feel enough. You get to choose, I said gently. Every day. We stood there a moment in the glow of twinkle lights and second chances. Then I cleared my throat. One more thing. As a gift to you and Ethan, the staff is staying an extra hour on my dime. No extra charges. Take your time. Enjoy your night. Her eyes went bright. You don't have to. I know, I said. That's what makes it a gift. When the last chorus swelled and the dance floor turned into a happy blur, I slipped away to the office to sign the final staff sheets and add a handwritten note to the invoice. Extra hour. Covered. Congratulations. J. No discount codes. No favors owed. Just grace, paid for quietly. I left through the side door around midnight. The city air was cool, and the building's brick felt steady under my palm as I locked up. Behind me, the ballroom glowed with the kind of warmth you can't order off a menu. I thought about all the times I'd been the punchline. All the clearance jeans and sensible choices and boring gear tucked in closets for days like this. When I walked in that morning, Danielle couldn't hide her shock. When I walked out that night, she couldn't hide something else, gratitude. Turns out cheap is what people call you until they need what you saved, built, and repaired. Then it has a different name. Then it sounds a lot like love.